Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're picking up our exploration of the lean startup methodology.
That's right.
Today, we're really getting into the experiment phase. This feels like where the rubber meets the road, scientifically speaking.
It really is. It's about taking that scientific approach, you know, moving beyond just having an idea.
Right.
We're now firmly in the validation stage. So instead of the old just build it and hope approach.
Which rarely works out perfectly.
Exactly. Here, every single action, every feature, every marketing idea, it's treated like an experiment.
An experiment designed to test something specific.
Precisely. To test those fundamental assumptions you're making about your business. The goal isn't just activity, it's learning. Genuine, validated learning.
Okay, validated learning. Break that down a bit. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means getting real proof data, basically, that shows you're making progress. It's evidence from the real world, from actual customers.
Not just projecting or guessing.
Not just guessing or relying on, say, market research reports alone. It's about seeing what people do, not just what they say they'll do.
I see. So this stops you from, like, spending years building something nobody actually uses.
That's the core benefit. It helps you avoid that huge pitfall. You learn quickly, you adapt based on real feedback, real signals from the market.
Makes total sense. Less wasted effort, more direct learning.
Yeah.
So, okay, how do you start structuring these experiments? Where do you begin?
Well, it kicks off by identifying what Eric Ries calls your leap of faith assumptions.
Leap of faith. Sounds dramatic.
Kind of, but they're the big fundamental beliefs your whole idea rests on, the things that must be true for the business to work at all.
And there are specific types of these assumptions to test.
Yeah, the two big ones we focus on initially are the value hypothesis and the growth hypothesis.
Okay, value and growth. Let's tackle value first. What's the value hypothesis testing?
It's pretty fundamental. That asks, does this thing I'm building actually deliver value to customers? Like real value?
Enough that they'd actually use it or, pay for it.
Exactly. Are you solving a real problem or fulfilling a real desire in a way that resonates? That's the value test.
Got it. Can you give us a real-world example? How has a company tested this early on?
Oh, absolutely. The classic story here is Zappos, the online shoe retailer.
Ah, yes, I've heard bits of this. They didn't start with a giant warehouse, did they?
Not at all. Nick Swinmurn, the founder, started incredibly lean. He literally went to local shoe stores, took pictures of their shoes, and then posted those photos on a really basic website he'd set up.
Just photos, so he didn't even own the inventory.
Nope. If someone actually clicked buy on the website, he would then go back to that store, buy the shoes himself, and then ship them out to the customer.
Wow. Okay, that is seriously lean. So what was the core question he was answering with that setup?
He was laser focused on the value hypothesis. Would people actually buy shoes online, period?
Because back then, that wasn't a given at all, right? People wanted to try shoes on.
Exactly. It was a huge leap of faith assumption. His simple product, just the photo and the promise of delivery, was purely designed to test that fundamental demand. Did people click buy? That was the critical data point.
And he was learning about more than just purchase intent, I bet.
Oh, for sure. By actually fulfilling those initial orders, even manually, he was bumping into other assumptions too.
Like what?
Like, how would payments work smoothly? What about returns? Shoes are notorious for returns. How much customer support is needed?
Right. All these operational bits.
Yeah. So even that super simple experiment started generating insights across multiple areas, way more valuable than just asking people in a survey, would you buy shoes online? Yeah. You see their actual behavior.
That's a powerful difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the value side. Did people want it? What about the other one, the growth hypothesis?
Right, the growth hypothesis. This tackles how the business is going to grow. How will you find new customers? How will you keep them?
So how do you get from those first few brave online shoe buyers to, well, Zappos today?
Exactly. What's the engine for sustainable growth? Is it word of mouth? Advertising? Viral loops? You need to test how growth will actually happen.
And this isn't just for brand new startups, right? This experimental approach can apply elsewhere.
Absolutely. Big companies launching new initiatives can benefit hugely. Let's look about HP, for example. Imagine they wanted to boost employee volunteering.
Okay, volunteering at HP.
Yeah.
How does that fit the lean startup model? Seems different.
Well, the situation has similarities. Let's say someone there, let's call her Caroline, has this goal. get more employees volunteering, but there's uncertainty.
Like, why aren't more people doing it already?
Exactly. Why are the current rates low? What actually motivates HP employees to give their time? What's the best way to reach them and encourage participation? Lots of assumptions, right?
Yeah, you can make a lot of guesses there.
So instead of launching some massive, expensive, company-wide campaign based on those guesses,
Which might fall flat.
right, the lean approach says treat it like an experiment, start small, formulate hypotheses about motivation, and test them.
So following the Zappos idea, Carolyn wouldn't just email everyone.
Probably not initially. She might start with a really targeted group, maybe employees who've been with HP a long time, perhaps people who've mentioned wanting to connect more with HP's community values.
Kind of like finding early adopters for volunteering.
Precisely. And then offer them a really great, well-organized volunteer opportunity, something appealing.
Sure.
Her hypothesis here might be, these employees value HP's community commitment, and a compelling opportunity will activate that motivation. That's a testable value hypothesis for the volunteering program.
And she'd be looking at who signs up, obviously, but what else?
Participation rate is key, sure. But just as important, maybe even more so initially, is the qualitative feedback.
Talking to them afterward.
Yes. Why did you sign up for this one? What did you like? What was frustrating? What would make you do it again? That immediate feedback is gold. Way faster and richer than waiting months for survey results.
I can see that. Much more direct learning. And how does this test the growth hypothesis for the volunteer program?
Good question. So the next experiments could focus on growth. For instance, do these initial volunteers talk about their positive experience?
Word of mouth growth.
Exactly. Do they encourage their colleagues to join the next time? You're testing if that positive experience translates into organic growth. Or maybe you test different ways of sharing those stories.
And if they don't sign up again or don't tell anyone?
That tells you something's wrong with your assumptions. Maybe the motivation wasn't what you thought, or the experience wasn't compelling enough, or your growth mechanism isn't working. It signals you need to rethink, to pivot.
So it's the same core loop.
Yeah.
Small test, real action, gather data, learn, adapt. Whether it's shoes or volunteering.
You got it. And that brings us to a really interesting idea, which is that an experiment is a product.
An experiment is a product. Say more about that. How does that work?
Think about it. That first thing you put out there, Zappos photos, Caroline's targeted volunteer event, that is the first version of your product.
Even if it's super basic.
Especially if it's super basic. It's not the final vision, obviously, but it's a real thing, offered to real people, specifically designed to test those critical leap of faith assumptions.
So the Zappos website with just photos was their minimum viable product, essentially, though maybe they didn't call it that then.
Exactly. It was the minimum thing needed to start learning about customer demand. And HP's small pilot volunteer program, that's the initial product testing employee engagement drivers.
The key is that it has to be functional enough to get real behavior, real feedback.
That's crucial. It can't just be an idea on paper. It needs to be something people can interact with, even in a limited way.
You mentioned a couple of other quick examples of this experiment as product idea.
Yeah, Kodak Gallery. They wanted to create these collaborative event photo albums.
Okay.
So they built a really stripped-down prototype, super basic, just enough to test two core things. One, did people even want to make these albums together? And two, critically, would the actual event attendees bother uploading their photos?
Testing the user behavior assumptions.
Right. And that simple product gave them quick feedback, helped them see if their core ideas held water or needed changing.
And the other one, laundry.
Oh, yeah, the mobile laundry service concept, Village Laundry Service, VLS. Instead of buying a whole fleet of fancy vans right away.
Which would be hugely expensive.
Totally. Their first product was literally a basic push cart with a washing machine bolted onto it.
Seriously, a washing machine on a cart.
Yep. They wheeled it around neighborhoods to test the absolute basics. Would anyone actually use a laundry service that came to them like this? What features mattered most? Again, minimum experiment, maximum learning about core value.
It's amazing how simple you can start if you're focused on just testing the biggest unknowns first.
It really is. It forces clarity on what truly matters at the beginning. It's about avoiding building features or entire products based purely on assumptions.
So this experiment phase, it's not about polish, it's about proof. It's about these clever, focused tests disguised as really early, maybe even rough versions of your offering.
That nails it. You're using experiments like a scientist uses them to gather evidence to refine your theory, which in this case is your business strategy. You're not just building blindly.
Okay, so let's wrap this section up. The big takeaway seems clear.
Mm-hmm.
If you're starting something new, whether a whole company or just a project,
Mm-hmm.
you absolutely need to adopt this scientific mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Think in terms of experiments. What are my biggest leaps of faith? How can I test them?
Definitely. Frame your initial efforts explicitly as tests for your value hypothesis and your growth hypothesis.
And don't be afraid to start really small and basic with that first product experiment.
Right. Because that simple start is what generates that invaluable, validated learning. It tells you if you're on the right track before you invest heavily. It can save you so much time and money.
So for everyone listening, think about that idea you have, that project on the back burner. What are the absolute core assumptions it rests on?
Yeah.
And then the key question. What's the smallest, simplest experiment, the most minimal product you could run, maybe even this week, to get some real data on whether those assumptions hold up?
And one last thought to leave you with. Look around at your daily work, maybe even your personal life. Are there activities you just do that could actually be reframed? Could you treat them as experiments to learn something important you're currently missing?
Really fascinating stuff, thinking like a scientist about building things. Thanks for breaking down this experiment phase for us.
My pleasure. It's a powerful way to approach innovation.
We'll continue our deep dive soon. Thanks for joining us.